Good morning. We are on Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph by the Mishnah, about two-thirds of the way down. And this Mishnah is we actually read it a little bit yesterday because the rule that is brought in this Mishnah was discussed in the previous Gemara. The Mishnah says, "Minayin lo'omer harei alai toida shelo yavi ela min achulin." Someone who says a relay taida, so it becomes a choiv on him. It's incumbent upon him to bring a carbon taida. He has no choice anymore. He can only bring chamchul, and he can't use his meiser sheni. Where do we learn that from? Should bring a carbon pesach for Hashem from tzayin and bakar. This is very strange. It only comes from sheep and from goats. There's no carbon pesach that's brought from bakar. What does the Torah mention bakar? In keimat hameloim etzaynu bakar. Lahakish kol haba min atzayin bakar lepesach. All the karbanos are hokish to pesach. Ma pesach davar shebechayve. Be'ema element achul, and just like it is required that you bring a carbon pesach, and it's only brought from chulin. It's not brought from meiser sheni. I've called davar shebechayve be'ema element achulin. So to all karbanos, that are required, it's not optional. If it's not, as long as it's not in a dava, you cannot bring it from your meiser sheni. Now the Gemara leaves a glaring question of where do we know that this is the case by a Pesach, and now the Gemara is going to address that. When someone says, "I'm accepting upon myself a taida," even though a taida be'etzem is in a dava, a person doesn't have to bring a taida, but once he says "harei taida," then it becomes a chayiv on him. Harei shlam, or if he says that I'm bringing a shlamim, the same thing. And therefore, he can only borrow from chulin. Nisachim, which are entirely consumed by the mizbeach, the Menachos nisachim is burnt, and the yayin is poured out. Since there's no part that's eaten, so therefore it's bechlal, it's mi shulchan gavaya, and therefore it cannot have. This is a separate cheshbon. It's a totally separate cheshbon, but it comes to the same conclusion that it's only able to be brought from chul and not from meiser sheni. Zakhamar, the glaring question that we said in the Mishnah before, Pesach gufa minola. Where do we know the Pesach itself can only be brought from chulin and not from meiser sheni? So Gemara the Tanya, learn it from a brayso. Rabbi Eliezer, nema Pesach ben Tzayim, nema Pesach l'doros. We bring a carbon Pesach in Mitzrayim. The Yidden brought a Pesach, the one that they spread the blood on their mashkef, on the mezuzos, and there's the Pesach that is always permanently in place. That every year the Yidden have to bring a carbon Pesach, as long as the Beis Hamikdash. Ma Pesach amal Mitzrayim leboil menachulin. Just like the Pesach Mitzrayim only came from chulin. How do we know it didn't come from meiser sheni? Because there was no meiser sheni. There was no Eretz Yisrael. Without an Eretz Yisrael, it can't be meiser sheni. You only have meiser sheni from to an Eretz Yisrael. Av Pesach amal l'doros leboil menachulin. So too, permanently, the carbon Pesach can only be brought from chulin. Amalei Rabbi Kiva says, which is probably a question that occurred to all of you. How do you learn something? The reason why how do we know there's no meiser sheni in Mitzrayim? It's because there was no meiser sheni. How can you learn from something that's just a practical, logistical problem? It's not that there's a lima that tells you that there's no meiser sheni, that you can't bring from meiser sheni the Pesach in Mitzrayim. It just didn't have it. So how can that teach us anything? So Amalei Rabbi Eliezer said back to him, even though it's not possible, it's nevertheless, even so, it could still be learned out from it. It's possible to learn out. Since this was, we sat hopefully for a couple of hours last week, and we went through the whole Seder. We talked about Mitzrayim and going out of Mitzrayim. This is the apotheosis. This is a very major thing, the Pesach Mitzrayim. It's not just dvarim that just happened to be that way. So we're able to learn out from it. That's his svar. Chazar Rabbi Kiva of Adonu Dinacha. Rabbi Kiva said You can't learn out. He answered Rebbe Eliezer. Rebbe Eliezer said, I want to learn out from Mitzrayim. Rebbe Eliezer, Rebbe Kiva asked the Kasha, and Rebbe Eliezer rejected it. Rebbe Kiva says, you can't learn out from Pesach Mitzrayim. Baal Pesach Mitzrayim, Shechein Ton Matan Dama Ve'Mum L'Gabe Mizbeach. In Mitzrayim, there was another thing that it was different. It also had no Matan Dama Ve'Mum. There was no Beis Hamikdash. So it was different in that regard. So maybe it was unable to be brought. Itaka didn't have chulin. It was only from chulin, not from Ma'aser Sheni. But it also was that it didn't have matan dam ve'mur because there was no Beis Hamikdash. Maybe that can be brought from Ma'aser Sheni. Amaloi, so Eliezer back to him. The Torah says you should do this avodah. Sheyu kol avodah shechodesh hazeh kazeh. All the avodas that will happen in the future should be like the avodah in Pesach. So Zok Gemara. This is very strange, right? Rabbi Eliezer had said, let's learn out from Pesach Mitzrayim. Rabbi Kiva had asked, "Ein don efsher mishi efsher." Then Rabbi Eliezer says, "No, I think you can be done efsher." Then Rabbi Kiva said, "But you can't learn out from there." For this other reason, Rabbi Kiva Rabbi Eliezer didn't answer him. He just said, "I disagree with you." So why is Rabbi Kiva still arguing with him? Right? He said, "Done me after." He said, "Yes, I ain't done after mishi after." So tomorrow, Rabbi Kiva, Yisavalo, they ain't done after mishi after. Leikaba Milsa. Why doesn't he stick to his guns? Why is he then coming up with the reason why you can't learn out Pesach Dairis with Pesach Mitzrayim? And if you're going to say that he's changed his mind, he said, this ain't done in Mesha Afsha Mishi Afsha. And the reason is he said he was masking to Rabbi Eliezer that Ein Chanami you can learn out from Pesach Dairis even though Pesach Mitzrayim even though it's Afsha. So then he said, but I have a kasha that there's a murim. There's no a murim by Pesach Mitzrayim, so therefore you can't learn out from it. So tomorrow Pesach midbar yechiach ledvarav. Pesach midbar yechiach. What about the Pesachim that were brought all the years in the midbar? That there was no Ma'aser Shein. It was all brought only from Chulin because again there was no Eretz Yisrael, and then there was a Murim Legabe Mizbech. So that's your kasha. What are you asking? So he says, I take a hold that ain't done efshe mishiyafshe. The doctor am done efshe mishiyafshe. Mal besser b'shem shcheine ton matan dom ve'mum legam mizbeach. Tem besser derish shadon ton matan dur ve'mum legam mizbeach. V'amal Rebbe Eliezer, and let's take Rebbe Eliezer's tersim. V'avadata. Rebbe Eliezer said back to him, no, it's not just that I'm learning out Pesach Deiris that it should be the same as Pesach Mitzrayim with the Memotzim. It's a hakish. It's a limud. There's a pasuk v'avadata that says that it's makish Pesach Deiris to Pesach Mitzrayim. Correct the Gemara, Rebbe Eliezer, le'melei Pesach Midbar Yechiach. Why does Rebbe Eliezer answer Rabbi Kiva to bring a raya from Pesach Midbar, like we suggested that was the weak point in Rabbi Kiva's upslug of Rebbe Eliezer? So tomorrow l'dvar the Rabbi Kiva come lidi di don nefshe mishiyafshe. He wanted to tell him, I hold on him efshe mishiyafshe, so this is all not relevant. Mishum hai pircha Pesach Midbar Yechiach. Pesach Midbar Yechiach. Mishum hai pircha. The question that you asked, Pesach Midbar Yechiach. Dacht Amen and don efshe. As far as your question, Pesach Midbar will prove it, because over there was a murim. But his taina vavadta was not on Rabbi Kiva's kasha. It was on Rabbi Kiva's whole, his original taina of that he said ein don nefshe mishiyafshe. He says it's not a limud, stam a limud, that it's a mematzinu, that you could say it's not possible to learn because it's only a practicality, it's a logistical problem. It's a hackish. The hackish is coming to tell you something. So hackish is coming to tell you, regardless of whether it's afshir or yesh. Sagt Gemara, nami lefrach. But practically Gemara, lemaisa, even if it's a hekesh, why can't you ask on it? The reason is, like we just said, I a little bit jumped the gun because it's once it's a hekesh, you can't ask a kasha of efsher mishi efsher. That's not a time. So what? In the base medrash, they were discussing the topic, and they said, this whole discussion in the Gemara was because our Mishnah had said that we learn out from Pesach to all other places, just like Pesach is something that's only Ba Menachulin, and so that tells you that all Karbanos, it can only be Ba Menachulin. It can't come. Any Davar Shabachayva can only be brought from Chulin, not from Ma'aser. And because we were makish everything to Pesach. But the Gemara says Pesach itself was learned out with this hekesh of Avadata, that we were makish Pesach Doris to Pesach Mitzrayim. So the Gemara, Pesach Kulechada Milsehi. The Gemara says no, we're not learning out. It's not a davar alomad behekesh that we learn out Pesach Doris from Pesach Mitzrayim, and then we learn out all other chayvus from Pesach Doris. We said this is the din of Pesach. We're learning out from Pesach. We're really learning out from Pesach Mitzrayim. So when we say we learn out all other karbanos from Pesach, it's not only from what we learned out from the Hekesh. I might have said this din of Pesach is only on Pesach Mitzrayim and not on Pesach Davis. So we say we have a Hekesh to tell you it includes all Pesach. But then when we learn out all other karbanos from Pesach, it doesn't mean from Pesach Davis, it means from Pesach Mitzrayim also. So it's not a davar alomad behekesh. We just needed the Hekesh to clarify exactly what Pesach we're talking about, but it's really only one hekesh. So Rabbi Kiva in the end was never masking to this whole derech of Rabbi Eliezer that we learn out that you can only bring from Chulin on a chayva from Pesach. So Rabbi Kiva Pesach he didn't agree with the source of Rabbi Eliezer. Pesach where does he know that Pesach doesn't come from Chulin? So Gemara Naftalem Adam Shmuel Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. He learns it out from this long brisa. I think it's a brisa. Yeah. So this is going to be a long brisa, I guess, that goes through, and it will end up showing where Rabbi Akiva learns it out from. Machlokes to Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva, and from first we're going to go through Rabbi Eliezer, then we're going to get to Rabbi Akiva, and from Rabbi Akiva we'll see where he learns out that Pesach is only come from Chulin. Now we heard Amar Shmuel, Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Shmuel said the same Rabbi Eliezer. This is the Torah. This is all unnecessary. The Torah says that you have the mincha, the chatas, asham, luum, lezevach hashlamim. We learn out something. All these different mentions of these karbanis are all extra. So oila, what do we learn out from oila? Ma oila tuna kli, af kol ton kli. Just like the carbon oila needs a kli, so too every carbon needs a kli. Mahi, which kli are we talking about? Ilay mizrak, if we're talking about the bowl that is makabel the dam, gabe zivche sham v'tzibanamik sevayasa ba'agonis. It says the gabe the zvachem, the shalmei tzibur, the shlomim that are brought by the kahal. It says that they put it in bowls. Elasakin. We learn out from the oila that just like the oila is shechted with a knife, so too every carbon is shechted with a knife. Oila gufa minal. And how do we know an oila needs a knife? It says by the Akedah that Avram took the knife, as Hamachelis is a knife, to shech his son. When he got the ayil, it says he took it as an ayla instead of his son. So this was an ayla, and it says a macheles. So we know that an ayla needs a knife, and we learn that from there. When the Torah says ayla, in this pasuk is telling you all karbanos need a knife. I mean, except for the ifus, obviously, but every animal. Mincha, then the next thing it said in the pasuk was a mincha. What do we learn out from mincha? Ma mincha in a necheles elu l'zichrei kuhuna, af kol in echol elu l'zichrei kuhuna. Just like the mincha is only brought ksiv kol zachar b'kayanim, so that tells you that it has to be brought by male kahanim. So all kabbanas are eaten by male kahanim. Now it doesn't mean all kabbanas. Obviously, shlamim and what was else? Taida, uh, Maisa, the Bechar, Maisa, those are eaten by the Balaam, but it means those that are eaten, that are remain to be eaten, are only eaten by the Zcharim of Kehan. My. Gemara says, what is this telling you? What do we need to teach this rule that the other Kabbanas are eaten only by Zikri Kuna? If it's only Chatas Asham are eaten by Zikri Kuna, it says by them straight out. And near there it says, it says it should only go to Zikri Kuna. It's talking about the shlamim of the tzibur, the ribuy the krasi. And it's talking about kehanim, and it says that it should only eat bekachri kachim by the kehanim. So what exactly are we being marber from mincha to tell you? The chatas and the asham, obviously oila is not eaten by kehanim; it's not eaten by anyone. And the shlamim and the taidas, all the kachri kalam are not eaten by kehanim. So what is it coming to tell you? So liman al zivchei shalmei tziba she'nechal nel zichri kuna. So no, this last lima that we said that zivchei shalmei tziba are only in by kehanim. It's not like this. Some bring it from the mirui the club kodesh kashim techalenu. It's come to be marba shalmei tziba, but Rebbe Eliezer says it comes from this pasuk. He disagrees. He says you don't learn it out from there. Chatos, to continue in the pasuk. Pasuk says chatos. Machados, makacha beblua. I've called makacha beblua. Just like a chatos, when a chatos touches anything else, it says, what does it say by a chatos? Kol asher yiga b'bsara yikdash. Anything that touches the basar of a chatos will become kaddish. Then it absorbs from the kachim of the chatos. It will have the same rules that will only be eaten by the kayanim. And it will have the heightened what do you call it? The heightened vulnerability to tumah, susceptibility, I should say, to tumah. I'll call mekadesh b'blua. All kabbanis, if you touch it, it will become absorbed. Zok the Gemara asham. What do we learn out from asham? Ma asham ain't shvir v'shilya kadesh by. Just like an asham, which is only from males, the fetus and the afterbirth. The placenta, if you shecht it and you find it inside, they are not kaddish because it's not. There isn't one. There never is on a male, obviously. Akal and shvir v'shilya kaddish. But so too, even the female karbanis, they will not. It will not be a kaddish along with it. Kasavar. So you see from here, vlad is kachim avayasin hein kadoshim. You see two things. First of all, you see he holds that the vlad kaddish only becomes kaddish when it's born. We've said we learned in the previous couple of blot about vladis of kachim having a kedusha. That's only from when they're born, but prior to their being born, when they're still fetuses in the mother's stomach, they don't have that kedusha yet because he's saying that takanat kaddish. The don nefsher mishiyefsher, and also we're saying we're learning that from a asham because it's male and it doesn't have the shilish shvir v'shilya. It doesn't become kaddish. That's something that's a yefsher. Miluim, we learn that from Miluim. Ma Miluim Mosreim B'Sreifa ve'ein Balichayim Mosreim B'Seifa. I've called Mosreim B'Seifa and Balichayim B'Sreifa. By the Miluim were brought by the Nesiim at the inauguration of the Mishkan, and we know that the din of Noiser, if you have leftover basar from a carbon, it has to be burnt, but if you made an extra carbon, it doesn't have to be burned. If he, let's say, made two carbonas, he lost one. But none of this happened by the miluim. Miluim was brought by the tzibur. There was no shenanigans going on with not having or making an extra one. They did the precise amount. So we know there was no noiser and balechayim. So too, all moisreim, all that holds true in the future also. Whenever there's moistus there's an extra animal, it doesn't get shreifa. It doesn't have the same din of shreifa as nicer. You get into the whole din of chatos is misazla and others are are brought, they go l'ria, they have to be put out to pasture. Shlomim, what do we learn out from Shlomim? Ma Shlomim mefaglin umispaglim. Just like Shlomim, the ikar din of pigel comes from Shlomim. If someone has a machshavas chutz l'zman, then it becomes pigel and chayiv karas if you eat it. And it also causes the nesachim when a person has a machshavas pigel on the carbon Shlomim, it also causes the nesachim that go along with it to become pigel. Avkal mefaglim umispaglim. So too all other karbanos, the nesachim that go along with it. By an oila also, if you have machshavas pigel, it calls the nesachim to become pigel. This was all Rabbi Eliezer's analysis of this pasuk. Now we're moving on to Rabbi Kiva. And remember, we're still trying to figure out where Rabbi Kiva knows that on Pesach it can't be brought from Ma'aser Sheni, it can only be brought from Chol. So this is Tanah Mishmei. The Rabbi Kiva Zoysa Torah Mincha. What do we learn out from Mincha? Ma Mincha Mekadeshes B'Blua. Av Kol Mekadeshes B'Blua. It says by Mincha also Kol Ashiyiga B'Basar Yikdash. Now the Itzrich, Rabbi Eliezer had said we learned out Chatas. From Chatas B'Lua is going to be Kaddish. And he's saying from Mincha. He says you need both. Itzrich L'Michta B'Chatas, Itzrich L'Michta B'Mincha. The Ikas Rachana B'Mincha Mishum Dedar Derechiva Bala. A mincha is soft, and what does a mincha get mixed in with? It's made out of flour. It gets mixed in, or bread. It gets mixed in with other bread. So the bread that it's touching is very soft. It's easy. It's able to absorb, and that's why it becomes kaddish. Avachatas emalai, but a chatas, which is two animals, it's not so easy for a taste to be absorbed into the other animal. Maybe it would not become kaddish because I'm going to bechatas from the basar agav the shaman kaddish. By chatas, it is more pilot. It has fat. Animal has fat, so it's more aggressive about giving out its taste. A mincha that doesn't give out its taste as strongly, maybe not. Shricha, so we need both. Chatas, what do you learn out from chatas? Ma chatas ein bo elam menachulin. Ubiyoyim ubiyadei hayimanis. Just like chatas has a rule, it can only go from chulin, not from Ma'aser Sheni. So this is going to be his source, where we're going to see that Pesach is also the same thing. It also can only be brought by Yoim, it can also be brought with the right hand. So too, all Kabbanis have to be only come from Chulin once it's a Chayva, and it has to be brought by day, and it has to be brought with the right hand. In fact, we have a Chatas Gufam Minolan. Where do you know Chatas itself? We're saying you learn from Chatas because it's only Bom and Chulin. How do we know it's only Bom and Chulin, not from Ma'aser Sheni? I'm Rav Chizda Dal Makro, Virkavan is Par Chatas Shaloi. It says it's the chatas that's his. It has to be his, and it can't be from mice. Biyoim suvesi nach. In fact, what do you have to tell me that it's by day? We have a different pasuk that tells you that all kabbanis have to be brought by day. It says biyoim suvesi kadinaspa einachanami. We didn't have to say that. We just threw it in. And the other Hamoed with the Rabbi Bachana Nafkid, Rabbi Bachana, Rabbi Shlakish, we had this several times. Whenever the Torah says finger and kahuna, it's only from the right. If you remember, then we said in the end it really is only the etzba. It's not the kahuna because there's a lot of things that says where it only says it doesn't have both of them and it's still with the right hand. So again, kadinas, but that also was lav dafka. Just like the asham is something that is eaten, and therefore, anything that's eaten, we say that the atzamas are mutter for the kehanim to enjoy. So I might have thought that that's only on those things that are able to be eaten. That's where the heter comes for the atzamas to that they're mutter. How do I know even those things that are fully burnt on the mizbeach that the atzamas, even though they're not able to be eaten, that they're going to become mutter? So we say we learn that from Ash. So Gemara. So we're learning from Chatas that all karbanos, according to Rabbi Kiva, all karbanos are only brought from Chul and not from Ma'aser Sheni. So Gemara, Rabbi Kiva havas avach the Pesach my avidlei. What does he do with this limud of Rabbi Eliezer that he learned from Bavadata, that we learned out from Pesach Dairis to Pesach, Pesach was starting to Pesach Dairis? Nachman, the Amar of Nachman, Amar of Minayin lemoisera Pesach shekar shlam. How do we know if you have a leftover Pesach that you bring it as a shlam? Shenar v'zavachta Pesach Hashem alakecha tzaynu bak. We say baka. This is the original problem that Rabbi Eliezer had said that tells you that we learn out everything from Pesach. What do we learn out from the baka? It tells you that the leftover Pesach becomes not just something that's mina ezim, mina tzayin, mina ezim, but it can even be something that's b'mina bakar, meaning a shlom. Fact, the Gemara is that way we learn out that the Meiser Pesach is shlomin. V'mehacha nafka midavu the shmuel nafka d'chsev mina tzayin kabana l'zevach shlomim. Amravu shmuel davar b'mina tzayin yehei l'zevach shlomim v'akati. It's coming to tell you this other pasuk mina tzayin kabana. It's coming to tell you davar b'mina tzayin yehei l'zevach shlomim. It says it's called it the shlomim. So it's telling you something that comes in the tzayin, which is the Karban Pesach, is also going to be a shlomim. The Meiser Pesach is a shlom. And we even have the third pasuk. Even Menachos Shmuel you don't need. Tells you that the Pesach also, the aliyah is burnt on the mizbeach as part of the emurim, even though the whole thing is supposed to be eaten. The aliyah, nevertheless, even so, has to be burnt. When the Torah says im keves, that tells you a second thing, that the Pesach sh'avah it's coming to tell you that not just a Pesach that got too old, it aged out, and a shlam that comes for a Pesach, meaning Meiser Pesach, has all the mitzvahs of a shlam. It turns into a shlam. So that it should have all the same dinim. Where the Gemara says, but when it says A's, it's coming to be mafsek, tell you that's only for the keves that it needs the aliyah, but not the A's. But in any case, we see a third pasuk to tell you the din that of Meiser Pesach is bosh shlamim. So the Gemara trusts a kroik. We need three psukim. Chad la'avra zmanei v'avra shnosei. One is to tell you when first of all, it passed the 14th day of Nisan, so it can only be brought, so it becomes a shlomim. And it was also Avra Shnosei, so it's no longer be brought as a Pesach, so that's why it becomes a shlom. Another one is to tell you where the Pesach passed, but the animal didn't age out. And one is to tell you even before Pesach. We need all three. It can only be brought as a Pesach at all. It's past a year, so it can't. But if it was past Pesach, but it's still less than a year old, the Chazal Pesach Sheni can still be brought as a Pesach Sheni. Maybe that doesn't become a Shlomim. Maybe when it's Avos Manai, but Loy Avos Shnasai, it couldn't be brought on Pesach Rishon. If it's before Pesach and he brings it, maybe since it could have been brought as a Pesach, if he would have just waited for Pesach, maybe that doesn't become a Shlomim. That's why we needed that as well. We're looking forward after Pesach to starting the next parak.